Hello everyone and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We join you this week from the Noble County Free Fair in Perry, where the 90th annual fair is well underway. We'll have more from here in just a moment. But first we're talking about Oklahoma's pecan crop. SUNUP's Curtis Hare caught up with our extension entomologist Phil Mulder.
So with the spots throughout the state that have seen a lot of rain, there's been some that's been positive and also some negative sides with that in regards to some insects.
Yes, and for the most part we've had really good results with in terms of kernel fill and kernel production. The rains can produce some problems with weevils. Pecan weevil is our #1 pest as far as pecans are concerned, and when we have heavy rains in that period of August to July, even as early as July, but August through even October, we can experience problems with pecan weevil. This year it occurred right on schedule, and it occurred at a time when we were really getting out of that water stage and going into the dough stage, which is perfect for weevil oviposition or egg laying.
So talk a little bit about how the weevils actually impact the crop. Are they feeding on the pecans, or is it something with the bark? How does that work?
Okay, so when they emerge from the ground as adults, they do get up in the tree. They can feed on about 1/4 of a nut every day. So you'd get 1 nut affected over a 4-day period. So the amount of feeding is minimal. If you've got a decent crop, we don't really worry too much about feeding damage. The main damage, or the primary damage, comes from the oviposition, the egg laying activity of the females. And during her lifetime, she can lay anywhere from 50 to maybe 75 eggs. If you do the math, obviously she can affect several pecans, and it's not like there's 1 or 2 out there. There's literally thousands out there in an orchard this size. If you have a dry situation where it may be a little droughty in some sense, you can experience aphid populations. A lot of the weevil insecticides, most of these chemistries will cause aphid flare-ups. And so that first application of a weevil insecticide can cause you to get into some problems with aphids.
That was going to be my next question, is management. So what would you recommend to the producers out there for managing both aphids and weevils?
Well, and what we really tell them is pay attention to the maturity of the pecan. Once it's into that dough stage, and that's when the weevils are really going to be active in terms of laying those eggs in those pecans. So make a treatment at that time. I mean, that's almost not based on a threshold, but it's accurate enough in a heavy rain period that we know it's going to control the first emergence of weevil. The second emergence, that second application should be based upon trapping. So if you're trapping adequately and if your numbers tell you that it's time to treat again, you're probably going to have to make a second application. In some cases, you may make as many as 4 applications.
All right, thanks, Phil. If you would like some more information about pecan weevils, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
After a good summer across much of Oklahoma, most of the cows should be in pretty good body condition going into the fall and winter season. But virtually on every ranch, someplace, there'll be those 2 or 3-year-olds, those young cows that came out of summer a little thinner than we'd like. And therefore we're concerned about their body condition as they go into the winter. You see, there was research done at South Dakota State back in the 90s where they looked at 2 different weaning dates for cows that were a little below the desired amount of body condition as they came to the first part of September. Then they followed those cows through the upcoming winter, the calving season, and then the subsequent breeding season. First thing they noted was that the cows that were early weaned, even though they were on the same pasture, got the same feed throughout the winter time, they were a half a condition score better in terms of body condition going into December and January. The cows that were early weaned, there was about a 9% difference in their favor in terms of the percentage of those cows cycling at the start of the next breeding season. So as you see on this particular data sheet, there was 83% of those cows cycling compared there to only 74% of the cows that were more traditionally weaned. But perhaps more important was the difference they found in the cows that actually conceived to the artificial insemination in that first go-around. 70% of the cows that were early weaned, that had that little advantage in body condition at the start of the breeding season, as compared to only 35%. That's half as many of those cows that actually conceived to artificial insemination. A lot of those that were later weaned actually caught up, and you see that there was about a week's difference in the average conception date and therefore average calving date the following year. That means that they had more calves that were actually bred to artificial insemination, plus the entire calf crop was a week older at the time that they would be weaned the following year and should be a little bit heavier. So I think that there are some advantages for those situations where you've got some young cows. Give them that chance throughout the remainder of September and October to regain body condition before the winter months set in. I think that'll be helpful to you and your bottom line, and we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Trade data shows that the beef exports are looking pretty strong, and Derrell, where are we seeing those strong markets?
Well, really across the board in all of our major markets, beef exports were up nearly 17% in July compared to last year. They're up about 15% for the year to date. So we're running very strong. Japan is our #1 market. Again, all of the top 5 markets are up for the year to date. So Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Canada, and Hong Kong is #5. Now on the last month's data, Hong Kong dropped sharply, and that one has me a little concerned. It's actually dropped the last 3 months, but it started off really strong early in the year. So going forward, we have to watch that market. But in general, we're in solid shape across the board.
Let's look at the other side of that. Are we seeing any impacts on the import markets?
Well, beef imports have been pretty steady this year. They were actually down slightly in July, and they're up just fractionally for the year to date. So we haven't seen a lot of increase in those markets. We import primarily trimmings type product or processing beef that's used for our ground beef market. And so, New Zealand, Canada is actually slightly bigger as a source, and not all of that is processing beef. Some of that is muscle cuts. New Zealand is #2, Australia is #3. Many years, Australia is our biggest importer, but they haven't been lately. They're still struggling from an earlier drought to get production back up to level, and now they're struggling again with drought. So we expect them to have trouble for the foreseeable future.
What are the grazing prospects for cattle like this across Oklahoma?
This may be the best year we've seen in a number of years. I think in terms of conditions to get wheat pasture, there's a lot of excitement out in the country about the potential for wheat for grazing. Now, lots of things can happen too. So, it's never a given at this point, but folks are getting geared up, and the markets actually look pretty attractive right now. Done some early budgeting work. There's an opportunity to buy cattle here this fall at this point in time. There's opportunities to actually price in a margin relative to next spring. So producers have an opportunity here. Some producers are going to, wait to buy and hoping for that seasonal decline into October here over the next month or so. I'm not sure that's going to happen this year because we may have a lot of demand for these lightweight calves, and they're pretty attractive buy right now. So I'd watch this market and be prepared to move at any time, given the conditions that we have.
So the Oklahoma cattle producer moves on the cattle to put on the wheat pasture. Wheat pasture doesn't quite work out. What does hay look like for those producers?
There's a bit of a question mark, but the USDA estimates at this point are for hay production to be down a little bit in 2018. Moreover, we had a sharp decline in hay stocks on May 1, which was the beginning of the hay marketing year. So hay could be an issue this year. And in fact, even from a cow-calf standpoint, some of this wheat pasture may get used to help us deal with some relative shortages of hay this winter.
Okay, thank you much. Derrell Peel, livestock marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Wes Lee here with your weekly Mesonet weather report. A producer this week asked me if the cool weather was going to affect his soybean crop from maturing properly. So I thought we would take a look at weather conditions as they relate to soybean production. Clouds have dominated the Oklahoma skies over most of this summer. This map shows solar radiation or sunlight intensity around noon on Wednesday morning. Full sunlight would be generating between 900 and 1100 watts per meter squared this time of year. Here we have numbers between 200 and 500 over most of the state. Looking at the entire year, we see the percent sunshine has been mostly below normal since about the middle of June. However, we also see the much higher than normal sunlight from the middle of April through early June. Average temperatures have followed a similar trend. At the Fairview Mesonet station, 2018 temperatures have been near or below the long-term average from middle June on, but much higher than normal earlier in the growing season. Degree days are our best indicator of how a plant is developing. For soybeans at Fairview, we have accumulated about 4,100 degree days for long season beans and 2,800 for short season beans. Both of these numbers are well above the previous 5-year average. This indicates to us that at least until now, beans should be on a normal development course. Now here's Gary talking about the state's disappearing drought.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, we've certainly made great strides against the drought over the last 4 to 5 weeks, and that's continued this week. Let's get straight to the new drought monitor map and see what we have. We still have 2 core areas of drought left in the state. We see a little bit of extreme drought, that red left in extreme southern Jackson and Tillman counties. We also have another area of drought up in northeast Oklahoma centered on Osage County. Some of that area along the Arkansas border does need to get some rainfall pretty quickly because they are starting to sink back into pretty large deficits. Now we can see those 2 drought areas pretty well on the departure from normal rainfall map from the Mesonet for the current water year, but we can see down in southwest Oklahoma a good 10 to nearly 14 inches below normal in some places, and up in northeast Oklahoma centered on Osage County, the Mesonet site at Winona is 14.2 inches below normal. This is shown pretty well with the percent of normal solar radiation map from the Oklahoma Mesonet for September 1st through September 11th. Some of those areas across south central up into central Oklahoma are seeing 30 to 40% of normal or percent of possible sunshine through that time period. That is, in fact, across the state as a whole, the darkest or least sunny period on record for the Mesonet history, dating back to 1994 when the Mesonet began, of course. So I've gotten lots of great help during September. Now it's planting season. We need that sun to come back for just a little bit. I know there are some areas of the state that still need help with rainfall, but hopefully we can dry out for a little bit, get that planting done, and allow folks to prepare their fields. And then we get back to a little bit more rainy pattern, hopefully, as we go through the rest of fall. So that's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We're joined by Dave Lalman, our Extension beef cattle specialist. And Dave, it's been raining, we have wheat coming up, and people are starting to make some marketing decisions when it comes to their cattle.
Yeah, it's the time of year when people are thinking about weaning their calves and what vaccines to give and how to manage them. And so we thought it'd be a good time to remind people about the marketing advantages of having a good herd health program in place.
So just for people who are maybe new to this concept, talk about the Oklahoma Quality Beef Network. It's been around now for quite a few years. What's the concept there? What's the premise?
So the overall concept is to build trust among the cow-calf producer and the person who buys the cattle, whether it's a stocker producer or a feed yard owner, and trust that the animals have been managed in a way to minimize health problems going forward as much as possible. And that's the overall concept. Turns out it has market value because on average last year, the 10 livestock sales held with OQB calves, the premium averaged almost $15 per hundredweight.
So that really adds up, and now you've got years of data to support that, right?
There's been a premium every year. Of course, the highest premium was 2014 when cattle prices were so high, but roughly it looks like the premium sort of goes with cattle prices. So if you're investing in an expensive commodity, you want to have the most assurances possible that those animals will stay healthy, and therefore apparently that premium goes up along with the price. Not only is it worth it, but many people are already doing these management practices anyway. So why not go ahead and take a step to certify your calves to assist in building that trust. It's more difficult for someone with 10, 20, even 100 head of calves to do that. And so the Oklahoma Quality Beef Network is one way to help level the playing field for people that don't have the opportunity to market their calves in bigger bunches, and you just cannot, it's more difficult to develop a reputation for quality management if you have fewer animals.
This time of year we talk about weaning dates and sale dates. Get us up to speed.
Well, the first weaning date was this week, and so we are underway. If folks are interested, they just need to go to the website and check out the weaning dates and the sale dates. But those weaning dates are several of them here in September. Folks can contact their extension educators. They'll be well aware of how to get in touch with the area livestock specialists who are serving as sort of the coordinators for their region for the OQBN program.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Dave. And for more information on the upcoming sale dates and the OQBN program in general, just go to sunup.okstate.edu.
The latest WASDE report came out on Wednesday, and Kim, there were some numbers that moved on that report. Give us kind of a walkthrough of the commodities.
Well, if you look at corn, slightly lower planted and harvested acres, but the big number was 181.3 bushels per acre production. They raised that about 4 bushels per acre. That's a record. However, with lower planted and harvested acres, they're about 14.8 billion bushels production. That's the second highest in record. They raised the ending stocks slightly from last month to 1.8 billion bushels, but it's still well below last year's 2 billion. Not much changes in the world numbers. If you look at soybeans, a record 52 bushels per acre. Production at 4.7 billion bushels. That's up from 4.4 last year. Third year in a row we've had record bean production. Ending stocks, 845 million bushels, up from 395 last year, over 100% increase in U.S. soybean ending stocks. Slightly higher production in the world, no change in consumption, so world ending stocks are projected to increase from 3.5 billion bushels to 4 this year, most of that being in the U.S. If you look at cotton, minor changes in yield, slightly lower production in the world, slightly lower production at 1.6%, slightly lower, not much happening in cotton.
So that's the crop numbers there. How has that impacted the prices?
Well, if you look at corn, that's where you had an impact on corn. Corn prices were down about 14 cents. Soybean prices were actually up 8 cents. And for bean prices, that's not much, but it was in the right direction. Cotton prices, just no move at all.
How has that changed what you've expected the prices to be?
Well, I was talking last week about I was optimistic for corn prices to move on higher. I'm still optimistic that corn prices could move higher as we go out into the marketing year. Soybean prices, I was very pessimistic last week. I was thinking, with the impact on China, that everything was just negative with beans. I'm feeling a little more optimistic, which means I'm only slightly pessimistic with bean prices. And cotton prices, when they were up around 90 cents, I felt they needed to come down. I think they're getting down now to an area where they could stabilize, and we may see them stay about where they are.
Now we're out here, Dr. Carver's actually planting research wheat as we speak behind us. You didn't mention any wheat prices in there. Where are we with the wheat, and how does it look?
Well, if you look at the WASDE, there was no change in the U.S. WASDE numbers for wheat, slight changes for the wheat. However, our wheat prices were hammered lower after that. And I think it's because we had slightly increases in Russian and Kazakhstan production. We had lower production in Canada, lower production in Australia, about 3 million metric ton there, but we had 3 million metric ton ton increase in Russia and Kazakhstan. The wheat price expectations, we're still well above the market. And I think we haven't had wheat demand. Our exports for hard red winter wheat, export sales are 40% below last year, and the USDA's prediction a 1% decline in exports from last year. That just doesn't add up, and it sure doesn't add up to higher prices.
What makes the price of wheat so sensitive to those little adjustments in the market?
Well, it's Russia. It's where it is. Their production was estimated to be 2.4 billion. They raised it from 2.5 to 2.6 this time. World production is still less than world use. World hard wheat production is still less than wheat. So if we were short of protein and quality wheat going into the 18 crop, we're going to have to be, because we're using it all up this year into the 19 crop. So I'm optimistic. I was looking at $5 wheat. I said, you give me quality, I'll give you $5 wheat. I'm looking at you give me quality, I'll give you at least $5.50 next year.
Okay, there you go. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Today we're going to talk about the new trend called cowboy cooking. Now, I'm not talking about the type of cooking you might do at an OSU tailgate party right before a football game. Cowboy cooking involves making a meal simply with as little equipment as possible, and possibly even without a kitchen. Think about biscuits, cobbler, beans, and meat. It also can be a one-pot cooking, or just using a grate over a grill or even a fire, a Dutch oven, or even a cast iron skillet. Cowboy cooking involves just simple ingredients, but getting kind of creative, such as with a smoky flavor, using that grilled flavor in whatever dish you're making. Most of the time, staples such as flour, sugar, onions, and celery, steak meat, and potatoes can be used in cowboy cooking. It's believed that the chuck wagon was a way to help get good help back in the Civil War, when you needed a cowboy to help drive cattle back in the Old West. If you fed them well, then they would stay and do the job. We're seeing this trend because it's a way to slow down and do things by hand as well as do things simply. For more information about the food industry, download our app at fapc.biz or go to SUNUP at okstate.edu.
Talking dairy production now, and how new technology is not only helping with the comfort level of cattle, but also helping to improve the bottom line. SUNUP's Dave Deacon explains.
In the mid-70s, we had over 3,000 dairies in Oklahoma. Now we only have about 164, but still almost identical cow numbers. We're still above 40,000 milk cows in the state. It's just being milked on fewer dairies, and the average size of the dairy is growing, and that's just the economy and efficiency of size.
Advances in technology have helped the Oklahoma dairy industry maintain its productivity over the years.
Drastic changes since I've been here, both in the quality of the cattle and the amount of production that they can give, and the technology that we have available out there now, of being able to track conductivity in the milk and detect health issues long before they happen, to all the way to these Insantec feeders that we can track every bite of feed and digitally record it in the computer, and track her water consumption and digitally record what she weighs twice a day, and then also have her milk production from every day.
Like many industries around the world, looking for efficiencies in the process helps the bottom line. When the cornerstones of your business are highly specialized and can weigh up to a ton each, you want them to contribute as much as they can at the lowest level of stress.
And that's been our intent with this barn, is to build a very comfortable barn, that they don't have to walk a long ways to their feed, and that they're always cool and comfortable, and hopefully we will lead to longevity just by making the cow more comfortable.
Healthier cattle that produce longer are not only good for the bottom line, they're good for everyone, even the end consumer. Changes in comfort of the animals and efficiencies are working their way through the industry.
That not only can we still improve production, which we have room for it, as the robotics are put in here, that cow will be milked more times a day, therefore she'll give more milk, but we also feel like she'll be a healthier cow too, because she never lets so much pressure build up on her udder. So we'll be actually a better, healthier product in the end, as we're making her a healthier cow as well.
Finally today, we love county fairs because each one is unique and Noble County is no exception. SUNUP's Curtis Hare shows us an event that mixes in a little safety with all the fun.
Well, this week at the fair we have several community events. We have the Buffy Calf Show later on this evening. We have the Beef Cattle Show this evening. Tomorrow we have the Livestock Judging Contest. We do a lot of things that involve the youth.
Well, this morning I did the tractor driving contest. I grew up around tractors. I've been around tractors all my life. My grandpa owned a construction company, and I just basically learned how to do that. And whenever I got into the Morrison FFA chapter, they said, hey, you want to do the tractor driving contest? It's like, sure, why not? I've done it all my life.
First, they have to take a written test. Once they've done that, they come through, do a driving portion. There's a safety check, and then there's a time limit and a cone. So they have a course that they have to drive forward through and then turn around and do backwards.
This is just a little more challenging than driving the big tractors back home in the fields.
You have to pull through it, and then you have to back through it, and then the backing part's pretty hard.
This is not something that you can just wake up to and decide to go do. You have to spend some time practicing. Well, when you're used to driving, operating equipment that is a lot larger, then you switch to a smaller piece of equipment or size, your dynamics are off. The pitch of the tractor is different, the turning radius is different.
Some things I like about coming to this fair is you get to be with people that you know and that you actually can relate with that are in your county. People that sometimes you don't see very often. Like you can go and say, oh, well, we got this, and they bring it to the show, and then you're like, well, how did that go?
It's a county event for all age groups.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. From the Noble County Fair in Perry, I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.